I would like to introduce David. He is from Port Charlotte, Florida. His home group is Naples Men's Stag from California. And David, let me unmute you. Come on in, brother, and the floor is yours, and we'll see you on the other side.
Hi, thank you, everybody. I'm Dave Maloney. I'm an alcoholic. Great to be with you guys. My sobriety date is May 15th, 1969. And what that means is basically that I still screw up. I just do it slower. I just want to clear the air about that right out of the gate. So, anyway, um, I'm a Catholic Irish alcoholic, a member of the CIA, as they say. And I do a rather simple program. The third step has been coming up lately in the morning meditations, I guess because it's March and it's been on my mind a lot lately. Uh, I came to the program when I was 28 years old. I'd been in the seminary for 6.5 years studying to be a priest. And on my way out, one of the old monks said to me, "Now, sometimes there's a reaction set in where you go completely in the opposite direction." I thought, that's a bunch of nonsense. That'll never happen to me. Wasn't too long after that, I was in Louisville, Kentucky, ordering a Budweiser and a blonde. So that very thing did happen to me, and I did go in the opposite direction, Mach 2 with my hair on fire. And as you can see, there was a lot that went with it. Um, and terror, bewilderment, despair the morning after, afraid of misery and depression, bounce checks, dry heaves. I remember getting a bank statement at home once that had 40 bounce check notices in it. It was like $5 a piece back in those days. And that certainly was indicative of my financial condition. My last drunk was in Chicago. On Rush Street. It was snowing sideways. I saw a priest on my way out, two priests on my way out to the street to find a pimp. And I said hello to them. The Pope could have been in there and I would have said hello to him on my way out. And I experienced alcoholic loneliness really and truly on that last trip. When I came home, by then we were keeping a gun in the house. She was going to leave me. Well, she was going to kill herself and the kids, or she was going to leave me. And that's with the winning streak I came in on. I had been seeing a psychiatrist at the time, and I had it turned out an appointment the very next day. And he saw my hemorrhaging eyes and my pounding head and my burning gut. And he said, maybe you ought to consider AA, or maybe you should consider Recovery Incorporated, because he knew I was crazy. And we'd had a AA priest give us a retreat in high school, Father Ralph Fowl. And so we learned a little bit about alcoholism. We learned that the Bowery had a lot of people in there with master's degrees, that alcoholics were people for whom life just wasn't big enough. And so I'd heard about AA before. I'd read his Look magazine article and the first meeting I attended was on the north. I got sober in Indianapolis. First meeting I attended was on the north side, the wealthy side of town. So I came in, I saw all the black Cadillacs in the parking lot. Went inside, I saw, it seemed like all the women had sable coats on, and there were diamond finger rings all over the place. Of course, I owed money all over the place. This was just like bleeding before a shark. And I first thought was, look at all the stuff you're going to have if you belong to this club. And that's how I got started in the fellowship. And then I got hooked up with a bunch of old timers. And they said things to me like, hey, listen, if you don't think you're an alcoholic, go out there and belly up to the bar like a man and find out if you are one. And don't let the door bump your ass on the way out. Well, I got my dander up. Boy, I stayed dry on anger for 6 months. All I did right was go to a lot of meetings to argue. I remember one night bringing the Bible to the meeting because I'd volunteered to chair the meeting. I'll impress them with my knowledge of St. Paul. Well, they told me what I could do with St. Paul, and they suggested I get the big blue book, learn about, zipping up my fly and wearing a winter coat and eating 3 squares a day before I retook the management of the Western Hemisphere. And that's how it was. 6 months of staying dry at anger, and one Thursday night, kind of like air going out of a balloon, I experienced a noticeable physical sense of, like that. All right, we'll do it your way. Don't drink, go to meetings, read the big book. Seemed like an awful long way around the barn, but we'll do it your way. And things began to change, not as quickly as I'd hoped, but things began to change. They said, choose a sponsor as something that you want. So I chose a millionaire. They said easy does it. So I went out and got a second full-time job. I mean, that was my yeah, but the syndrome going on in the beginning. I had issues they just didn't understand. You know what I mean? And so that sponsor had signed the mortgage for the then Progress House in Indianapolis, halfway house. And he said, you go down to that halfway house meeting down there on Thursday night. That's where you should go. And so I went down to this basement meeting filled with smoke and with smoke eaters all around the top of the ceilings that weren't working very well. And I met guys that had been arrested 50 times and 150 times. I'd never been around people like that. Lawyers who lost their licenses, defrocked ministers, skilled tradesmen. I met a playwright one time. And that ended up being the place where the bulk of my service work opportunities were available to me over my period of sobriety. I could always go in there and find a new guy, fresh off the street, finally put dry pants on. His 80-year-old mother brought him down there in hopes that he could get a bed. And his eyes were bulging out, and you could take him upstairs to the chapel area, and he'd turn his will and his life over. And then 3 days later, he was complaining that the bacon was too crisp. But at least in the beginning, you had him for a while, and the beauty of that was it gave me relief for the fever of life, because life went on for me. My wife continued to drink. And in fact, she ended up drinking herself to death. I found her on the floor in the bathroom, September 2001. And along the way, I got help from Al-Anon because I mistakenly took advice from people in AA about what to do about living with an alcoholic. And that was a big mistake. Turned out Al-Anon had a better answer, and that was detach with love. You didn't cause it, you can't cure it, you can't control it. So I got relief and some degree of sanity from my exposure to the Al-Anon people. So it turned out AA's an apple, Al-Anon's an orange. It is not the same kind of thing. And they said in AA, put the same effort in here that you did into drinking and chasing women. So, oh man, that was a lot of work, let me tell you. And that's what I did, went out and carried the message and made the coffee and cleaned the ashtrays and put the chairs away and collected the money and kept some for myself, and spoke at schools and businesses and public information and CPC, and whenever they said asked, I said yes. And that turned out not to be a good idea because I can't do everything. I found instead that working with the young people in AA was a wonderful experience for me. ICKY-PA, as they were called in Indiana. And I couldn't understand why it was such a high for me. And then it dawned on me I'd been a youth leader all my life. It was a perfect match. And I loved those kids. Some of them have gray beards today. But what a terrific experience. We went camping, we did conventions, we went, it was just a mutual love affair. Absolutely wonderful stuff. I could talk to men in prisons and jails because I think with my mouth and I don't have any tact or diplomacy. I can't do service committees very well. I don't do business meetings very well. I've tried to start new meetings. I didn't have much success with that. Haven't always been a good sponsor, even though I'm going to put my number on here and see that green check right there. That's how I keep what I have. I take men through the book here on the phone in the man cave. And that's how, and the more I empty myself out, the fuller I get. And so that's what happened to me. And um, there's no virtue in old age. I don't know what people think 55 years is supposed to look like, but believe me, I don't belong on a pedestal. I'm accountable. Wilson will say, be quick to use what religious people offer, even though he didn't follow his own advice that way. But the fact was his spiritual sponsor for the first 20 years was a Jesuit priest, Father Ed Dowling, who heard his fifth step. He was taught to meditate by Sam Shoemaker, an Episcopal priest in New York. When Bob and Bill and Ann Smith were living together in Akron there, they would go upstairs before the day started and have a devotional, which was based a great amount on the book of James. In fact, so much so that the program was almost called the James Club. Dr. Bob was said to have carried a Bible with him to meetings most all the time. So this is what Wilson suggested, and that's most of us just go back to whatever it is we've been raised with. I found that AA very clearly is designed to save your ass, but religion is designed to save your soul. And again, one's an apple and one's an orange. I thought AA was a religion when I first got here. Oh, I don't have to go to mass anymore. Well, it turned out not to be a religion. It's a spiritual program. And what is spirituality? Well, spirituality is how I treat my wife. Spirituality is how I treat toxic people. Spirituality is how I treat clerks or little guys that I can beat up and bully. Spirituality is how I keep my mouth shut. Spirituality is how I exercise restraint of pen and tongue. Spirituality is how I invest in spiritual reading outside the big book. You know, AA is designed to be kindergarten spirituality, and pretty soon you want solid food. So you can go for more solid food and find it in many of the places that produced it in the first place. You know, we talk about the book Drop the Rock. We talk about some of the other early influences of AA. And so, in fact, I went to we were visiting Disney in Orlando, and I went to a meeting there at Celebration, Florida. And one of the old timers was reading Dr. Wayne Dyer before the meeting. I thought, that's just going to make him more self-centered. I better write a meditation book. And that's what I did. I wrote a meditation book, Love and Service. And I donated the proceeds to the Progress House in Indianapolis. It's on Amazon for about $5. I'm not supposed to tell you about it, but I just did. By the way, the 24-hour book is not conference approved either, in case you're in total shock. But at any rate, I work a simple program. I want to say simple, simple, simple. Please, in the morning, keep my thinking straight. Keep me away from the near occasion of things that can lead me astray. You know, sometimes that can be lust, and lust doesn't have to be with sex. Lust can be lust for shopping, lust for too much AA, lust for food, lust for gambling, lust for politics or whatever. You know, anything that's going to become so big and gigantic in my life that it upstages my AA program, I will be running the risk of surely drinking eventually. If that selfish, self-centered behavior continues. It says that in our big book, and our collective experience shows that. The last 5 years I did service work at the Progress House, we lost 45 men. We lost them to the same thing. We used to call it pink or green. They fell in love or they started working too much and didn't have time to go to meetings. And the Grapevine issue on relationships said, how do you know two AAs have had the second date? Well, there's a moving van in the driveway. That's how you know. You know, we don't talk about these things, especially in mixed meetings, but the fact of the matter is that's very much the case for a lot of us. So pink or green, we called it, romance or finance. And boy, oh boy, they're full of vinegar at the beginning, and not too long after that, you're staring into their mother's face at the funeral home, apologizing all over yourself for her 43-year-old bodybuilding son over there in the casket that the relatives are walking by and saying, well, he wasn't that bad. So, at any rate, it takes work. It takes vigilance for me. I'm 83 years old. I have rebelled openly against the idea that the aging process is going to do for me what virtue couldn't. I have rebelled, and it's brought nothing but heartache for me. And I think the men here can relate to that, maybe more than the women. But at any rate, that's some of the stuff that I've struggled with. So I have good angels, I have bad angels. I've got them both, and I have to be vigilant and say yes when I'm asked to speak. And I continue to put my name and phone number on these meetings in hopes of getting a guy to come forward so I can take him through the book, because I have to listen to what I'm sharing with that guy. And that's how I keep what I have. And so far, I've had more service opportunities and more opportunities to speak online than I ever did in person. Somehow in person, you know, oh, we know what Maloney's going to say. You know, he's not an expert because he didn't come from more than 50 miles away or something. You know, I don't know what to tell you what happens to us, but at any rate, it's working pretty good. My first wife died. I met my second wife at the widows group. There were 15 women there for every man. We just celebrated 22 years. We've traveled all over the world. This next Thursday, we're going to leave for a 20-day cruise in the Caribbean. And there'll be Friends of Bill W. meetings every day on that ship, which I'm really looking forward to, because I'll meet people from all over the country. So I'm not saying you're going on a cruise or any of that stuff. I'm just saying the given is from any old timer is that if you focus on your sobriety, issues of money, jobs, relationships work out beyond anything you could ever predict for yourself. Any old timer will tell you that. And that's been our collective experience. And most of all, you get yourself back. You get a relationship with a big ranger. You get a relationship with someone who cares and loves you so far more than words can explain. It'll blow your mind. And, you know, we marry and bury our own. So when that first wife died, there were 221 people show up at that funeral, mostly from the tribe. And when we married, there were about 200 plus felons, Lutherans, Catholics, people looking for the men's room, all God's kids all together at the marriage. And we even had a build your own Sunday bar, which was a big hit, a great success. So we had a good time. Had our honeymoon in Barbados. So that's enough. If I talk anymore, I'll be bragging and trying to stay right sized. Thank you very much. God bless.